From that moment on, my brother and sister-in-law told me firmly, "We'll handle the house ourselves. It's time for you to find another place to live." My mother, siding with them, began treating me as if I were a burden. Did they even realize who had been paying the bills all this time? I never thought I'd face such disrespect, but their words solidified my resolve to take action. My name is Kinsley, a 30-year-old woman who moved back in with my parents after college. At first, I tried carving a path in the corporate world, but the pressures became overwhelming, and I returned home to regroup. While navigating unemployment, I explored remote work opportunities and eventually started freelancing in engineering, a field that matched my academic background. It wasn't easy at first, the projects were small, and the pay was modest, but the freedom of working on my terms was deeply fulfilling. Unlike traditional jobs, freelancing allowed me to earn a respectable income without constant social interaction. Over time, I gained confidence, built a steady client base, and saw my earnings grow. Within a year, I was making as much as a regular corporate employee. Yet, my success was met with skepticism at home, particularly from my mother. My father understood my work-from-home lifestyle, but my mother, with her traditional mindset, struggled to accept it. "How long do you plan to stay home?" she often asked, her tone laced with doubt. Even after showing her client emails and pay statements, she remained unconvinced. She dismissed my work as illegitimate or suspected it involved something shady. Despite my efforts to reassure her, she clung to her skepticism. "What if you end up relying on unemployment benefits? Those don't last forever," she'd say. Though I dreamed of moving out, my savings weren't quite there yet. Around that time, my father's health took a turn. He began experiencing severe leg and back problems, forcing him into early retirement. With his income cut off, he tried to reassure me, saying, "My pension will be enough," but knowing my mother's spending habits, I doubted that was true. My father had always supported me, from funding my education to helping me through my mental health struggles. Leaving him to manage everything alone didn't sit right with me, so I made a decision. "I'll take care of the family finances," I told him one evening. Surprised, he asked, "Are you sure you can handle it?" I showed him my steady income and assured him I could manage. Gradually, he came to trust in my ability. I began contributing to household expenses, covering medical bills, and even setting up a new credit card account for my mother. Despite this, my mother's attitude didn't change. "Why does Kinsley still live here?" she questioned one day. Even as I continued to shoulder the bulk of our financial responsibilities, it took my father's intervention to make her acknowledge the reality of my contributions. But things only got harder. My mother began taking my help for granted, and her demands increased. "Can't you finish your chores faster?" she'd snap, disregarding how much I juggled between work and household responsibilities. My attempts to explain fell on deaf ears. The strain between us grew, and I couldn't help but feel our relationship was unraveling beyond repair. In contrast, my father remained a pillar of support, fully aware of my efforts. Despite the strained dynamic with my mother, we managed to persevere for another year. Then, everything changed when my father's health took a sudden turn for the worse, requiring an extended hospital stay. I visited him daily, spending quiet moments offering reassurance and sharing updates. One evening, as we sat together, he looked at me with tired but grateful eyes. "I know dealing with your mother hasn't been easy," he said softly, "but thank you for everything you've done for us." His words strengthened my resolve. Even as my relationship with my mother grew increasingly tense, I often felt suffocated by her demands, but I reminded myself of her sacrifices when I was younger, her tireless efforts to support me through my student years. Those memories kept me grounded, even when our bond felt irreparably strained. Then came an unexpected upheaval. My brother Wesley and his wife Aaliyah moved in. Their arrival was abrupt and unannounced, throwing my life into disarray. "We'll be living here now," Wesley declared with a confident smile. "This will ease the burden on you." I stood in stunned silence, noticing how my mother avoided meeting my gaze. Wesley's words seemed helpful on the surface, but the underlying tone felt more like an ultimatum. My mother chimed in, her gratitude barely masking her intent. "Now that they're here, you'll have even more time to contribute to the household." It wasn't lost on me that Wesley, a prestigious college graduate with a well-paying corporate job, hardly seemed in need of assistance. Why had they moved in? Could they truly manage without my financial support? The sudden shift in our household dynamics left me grappling with uneasy questions. Living with Wesley and Aaliyah turned out to be far more challenging than I anticipated. Their expectations were immediate and unrelenting. "Wake up, Kinsley, make breakfast," Aaliyah's voice echoed through the house as she banged on my bedroom door one morning. Already awake and focused on my work, I calmly responded, "I'm up and working." But Aaliyah was unrelenting. "Stop making excuses and get breakfast ready," she snapped, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Begrudgingly, I set aside my tasks and headed to the kitchen, wondering how long I could endure this new normal. I reluctantly joined my sister-in-law in the kitchen, reminding myself that mornings in our household were typically unhurried. Everyone usually prepared their meals at their own pace, especially when my mother and Aaliyah were present. Traditionally, I had assumed a wife would prepare breakfast for her husband, but Aaliyah insisted on teamwork, leaving me with little choice but to help. Despite my efforts to craft a thoughtful meal, soft scrambled eggs, a crisp lettuce salad, buttered toast, and a plump sausage, my work was met with disapproval. "Is this all you made? This isn't enough," they complained, their tone laced with disdain. I clenched my fists, trying to maintain composure. "You don't have to eat it," I snapped, frustration finally bubbling to the surface. Their shocked expressions quickly turned combative. "Who do you think you are?" Aaliyah shot back, her voice sharp with irritation. "Yeah, what's with the attitude?" Wesley added mockingly. "Just who do you think you are?" I tried to defend myself. "I have work to do, real work, but you wouldn't understand that, would you?" "Work?" Wesley sneered. "What kind of work is that? Are you crazy?" At my wit's end, I grabbed my laptop and stormed out, ignoring their continued jeers. Wesley's voice trailed behind me, demanding to know where I was going. I didn't answer. Instead, I headed straight to my father's hospital room. When I arrived, his concerned eyes met mine. "Kinsley, what's wrong? You look upset," he said softly. "I just had a huge fight with Wesley and the others," I admitted, my voice trembling. He sighed, his face etched with worry. "I didn't realize things had gotten so bad. I'm sorry, Kinsley. You shouldn't have to endure this." "But what about Mom? She seems more comfortable with Wesley around." I hesitated. "You don't have to stay in a place where you're not respected," he replied firmly. "What matters is your happiness. Live your life the way you want." His words gave me clarity. I decided right then to leave. When I returned home that evening, the atmosphere was thick with tension. My mother, brother, and Aaliyah sat waiting, their expressions grim. "Why weren't you at work?" Wesley demanded. "I had to take the day off because of you." I couldn't help but scoff inwardly at how easily he seemed to take time off. Their accusations quickly escalated, with Wesley finally declaring, "Get out. The three of us will live here from now on. If you don't like it, leave. We don't need you." Shocked, I asked, "Why? What did I do?" "You're unnecessary here," Aaliyah chimed in smugly. "We can manage without you." Even my mother sided with them, viewing me as a hindrance despite my financial support. Their disregard for everything I'd contributed pushed me past my breaking point. Quietly but resolutely, I began executing a plan. First, I transferred all funds from the credit card my mother relied on daily into a separate account under my control. Then, I moved the money from my father's bank account, essential for his medical expenses, into another account that only I could access. Without telling my mother, I ensured the financial burden would now fall squarely on Wesley and Aaliyah. Finally, I packed my belongings and stood before them. "I'm leaving," I said firmly. Their stunned faces were a mix of surprise and satisfaction. Though they had harassed me relentlessly, it was clear they hadn't expected me to take such decisive action. Yet, their faint smiles hinted they were enjoying their perceived victory. Little did they know, they were about to feel the weight of my absence in more ways than one. As I announced my departure, their taunts were quick and cutting. "Finally, you're leaving? We've never had to deal with someone as difficult as you." Aaliyah sneered. "You're not coming back, right?" Wesley added mockingly. "Of course not," I shot back, my voice steady with resolve. "And don't contact me." They smirked as I walked out, but I couldn't help wondering how long their confidence would last once reality set in. Starting fresh in a serene new environment, I found peace and freedom I hadn't experienced in years. With renewed focus, I threw myself into my work, building a life that was truly my own. But the tranquility didn't last long. As expected, a call from Wesley shattered the calm. "I told you not to contact me. What do you want?" I asked, irritation clear in my tone. "Kinsley," he began, his voice tense, "what did you do with the family finances? We can't manage anything anymore." I let out a dry laugh. "I told you repeatedly about my work and how I handled everything, but none of you ever believed me. You and Mom thought I was freeloading." "Well, Mom said a lot of things, and I got confused," he admitted, desperation creeping into his voice. "Look, I'm not there anymore," I said firmly. "You'll have to figure it out yourselves." A few days later, he called again, his tone even more urgent. "Kinsley, I need your help. I need money." "Are you serious? Don't you work for a big company?" I asked, incredulous. There was a long pause before he confessed. "I got fired. I messed up big time at work." The revelation left me momentarily stunned. It became clear that he had likely returned to live with our parents under the assumption that there was enough money, perhaps believing the pension would suffice after our father's retirement. As his pleas grew more frantic, Aaliyah and my mother chimed in, begging for financial support. My mother even admitted, Your father refuses to contribute to the household anymore. I took a deep breath and responded calmly. I've supported all of you long enough. It's time for you to stand on your own feet. I won't be helping you anymore. With that, I severed communication. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary for my own well-being. In the midst of this turmoil, my father, weary from years of conflict, consulted a lawyer and chose to live a quieter life elsewhere. I visited him often, cherishing our time together. Meanwhile, updates from a mutual friend painted a bleak picture of Wesley's new reality. He had moved into a modest apartment and was struggling to make ends meet. My mother, unused to working outside the home, found her new job challenging. Wesley, now in a junior position, clashed with younger colleagues who weren't shy about sharing their opinions. Aaliyah, unable to cope with the mounting pressure, eventually left him, leaving Wesley and my mother to navigate their hardships together. My mother's penchant for overspending persisted, resulting in mounting debts. Though I felt a twinge of concern, I knew I couldn't shoulder their burdens anymore. Meanwhile, I thrived in my newfound independence, working diligently and steadily building my resources. With my future looking brighter, I began considering new ventures and hobbies. Most importantly, I made time for my father, whose cheerful presence reminded me of the joy in living a life free of unnecessary drama. Together, we embraced this new chapter, savoring the peace we had both fought so hard to achieve.